Okay, if you're just joining us, we're starting our discussions now. You already know what we're looking at this morning, national security. Of course, this is very apt, except you are not in Nigeria. Even if you are not in Nigeria, the security situation in Nigeria, of course, should get to you and should, of course, worry you. And that's why we're looking at it this morning. Joining me for discussions, it's my pleasure to welcome to the studio Dr. Yusuf Tuggar, former member, House of Representatives, former governorship candidate of the Congress for Progressive Change in Bauchi State, of course, in the 2011 general elections. Dr. Tuggar, good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here. Just a point of correction. I'm not a doctor yet.
Sorry. Maybe I'm just being prophetic here. Honorable Yusuf Tuggar. Please work on that, sir.
Definitely.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right. Ahmed Saleh is joining us for discussions as well this morning. Ahmed is a forensic scientist, a public security analyst as well. Good to see you, Ahmed.
Pleasure is all mine, Binga.
All right. Like I said, the situation in Nigeria today should worry every patriotic citizen. If Kaduna State is under curfew, I take it that almost every part of that state is affected one way or the other. If Damaturu, the Yobe State capital, is under 24-hour curfew, we know that Yobe State is in a way affected. Again, because these states also are contiguous to other states, that means if you are planning a journey that will take you through any of those states, you have to think twice. That's a problem. Does that worry you as much as I think it should?
It does immensely. I'd like to begin. You see, unfortunately, we find ourselves having to condole those who have lost their lives every time, we come here. So my heart goes out to them once again, and we pray the Almighty helps us find the wisdom and the means of bringing this conflict to an end. It worries me because I also happen to be from the Northeast. I come from Bauchi State. So as you rightly pointed out, actually even visiting home and visiting relatives that are spread out in the region becomes a problem, and we can see our people suffering. Now, this is why, I think it's not just enough to do something about this thing, but to also be seen to be doing something about it. The presidency, the system of government we're practicing today, the U.S. presidential system, is one that is designed in such a way that the presidency, the seat of the president, is to be used as a bully pulpit to express the emotions of the citizenry of the country. This is what the Americans are doing with it. It is, we don't have a monarch. We don't have it's not a prime ministerial system where you have a prime minister and a president at the same time. So the president has to be visible. You have to make choices. You have to decide. Do you want to be at the Sugarloaf Mountains and Copacabana and Ipanema Beach in Brazil? Or would you rather be seen by your people visiting Budum district in Maiduguri and Kumshe in Maiduguri and the cattle market in Potoskum? That in itself, being seen to be doing something, brings back a sense of hope for Nigerians, which is clearly absent at the moment.
Ahmed?
Yes, Benga.
What's your initial reaction to this? It's like while the country is on fire, the president is not around, although a lot of people will also argue that the president doesn't need to be around. His presence or absence wouldn't in any way alter operational issues. Those who have responsibilities already have their duties well cut out for them.
Yeah, first of all, like my chief here did, actually, my heart goes out to the family of those who lost their loved ones, in the crisis. At the same time, I'm not going to sit down here and pretend that Mr. President, by jetting out of the country, has done well. Just like someone actually, I was reading through the national paper, said that Mr. President could rule from anywhere in the world. That's just a political statement. whoever actually does not see Mr. President's absence in this country in this particular time, when the country needs his presence most, that person is just being too economical with the truth.
Does the presence of the commander-in-chief at the war front change the war tactics?
Yes.
Does it?
In this particular context, which you asked the question, yes. It could and it could not. I'm going to map out the point right away. You see, when it comes to the issue of national security, there are some difficult decisions that only the president has the constitutional powers to take such difficult decisions.
Like what now?
Yes, okay, fine. For example, if you look at the situation critically, the security agencies have been working, even though people are saying that their best actually is not best enough, but all the same they are trying. If peradventure they come to discover a very powerful, a citizen of the country, who is probably involved in this whole thing, there are some people, the security chiefs, even though it is their constitutional duty and responsibility to make sure that having all the facts, they arrest this person, and put him in custody before other legal processes are, initiated. They may not really have the moral capacity, the mental maturity, the boldness, to make a decision of putting this person in handcuffs, which probably only Mr. President could. So, which means the absence of Mr. President can as well actually affect the efforts of the security agencies at this particular time.
All right, Honorable Tuggar, we won't be discussing the vacuum this morning. We actually should be looking very closely. We have a roadmap. The government set up a committee. The committee submitted a report. A government roadmap was drawn through this white paper. This is the government white paper on the report of the Presidential Committee on the Security Challenges in the Northeast Zone of Nigeria. That's the Ambassador Gatimari Committee. We'll be looking at what this white paper says and all of that. But some preliminary issues here. One thing that worries me immediately is this level of arms buildup. Is this such that these things can't just happen overnight? If the security agencies have been tackling this issue for over a year now, and yet the insurgents still seem to have a large reservoir of armory. How did this come about?
Well, I think there are several factors, because one should not discount the impact of the conflict and the eventual collapse of the Gaddafi regime in Libya. Prior to that, we've always had a problem with the proliferation of, or rather the inflow of small arms and light weapons, as they describe them. It's globally recognized. But now you're having heavy-duty weaponry, finding its way into Nigeria that needs to be checked by the security agencies. And I think, you see, we have to also look at our history, look at the past, how similar conflicts have been handled in the past. This is not the first time we're having such conflicts in Nigeria, albeit, it's escalated to a different level. We've had the Mahadist conflicts in the past during the colonial era. The Sadona of Sokoto also had to deal with some level of extremism and some Mahadis during his tenure as premier of the northern region. But the way they tackled it seems to be completely different from the way we're approaching it now.
How did they tackle it? They
tackled it by relying heavily on the traditional institutions. Okay. Because the traditional institutions in northern Nigeria are the custodians of the Islamic faith. This is how the Sokoto Caliphate came about. You have different levels. You have the emirs, you have the hakimai, and in Borno, when you go lower, down, not even to the ward level, to the hamlet level, you've got bulamas. If it is the Sokoto Caliphate area, you've got the Jawrawa, and so on and so forth. So it is an and then
these are different levels.
Different levels,
control.
Yes, exactly. And in urban areas, you have Meangwa. Before you are allowed to set up a mosque or before you become a preacher, you have to sit before a panel. They have to vet you. They have to check your use of language, whether it's inflammatory or not, your diction, your knowledge in Islam and all of that. And when such conflicts arise, that network, that system is used to curb it. So right now, we need to open a doctrinal front as well. We have to fight a doctrinal war. We've got homegrown Islamic scholars that have not been influenced by this foreign import, because Islam has been in Nigeria, for centuries, for a very long time. Dating back to, you would even argue the 8th century, particularly in Borno. So while there were influences in the Middle East that altered the minds of certain schools of thought, we had our own influences here. We had prolific writers and scholars, Sheikh Usman Danfodio, his brother Abdullahi of Gwandu, Sultan Bello. They wrote, while, people in the Middle East were being influenced by the likes of Hassan al-Banna, by much later by Qutb, we had these people who were writing Nurul al-Babi and Diyaul Hukam, and, these are all, enlightening jurists, enlightening those with senses. These are scholarly works. And those homegrown scholars that we have that are working hand in hand, or were working hand in hand with the traditional institutions, are there to take on these people. And Islam is a religion that is premised on logic.
Okay.
So you can actually take on these people. Okay. And because, it's a mind thing. Okay. Some of these people who actually engage in suicide bombing and all of that genuinely believe that what they're doing is right. Yeah. So you need to engage them. You need
somebody to engage them.
Engage them and, educate them. And if you defeat them, it's intellectual judo. If you defeat them intellectually, they will have no choice but to succumb and give in.
Okay.
We're not
is it the absence of these people, these scholars? Do we have a dearth of them? Again, then the other side of it, the traditional institutions that you talk about, the hierarchical setup, what has happened to it? Is it that it has broken up? Because we still have those traditional rulers in place. You still have the sultan, you still have the emirs, the powerful emirs. What has happened to their influence over this situation?
A lot of them are just sitting and waiting, folding their hands, because they have not been involved. Because of
do they need anybody to involve them? Does the sultan of, for example, need anybody to tell him that if there is war in any part of the north, it is a direct challenge to his influence?
It goes beyond.
Does the emir of Kano need anybody to prompt him to tell him that if Kano is on fire, it is his emirate that is on fire? Does the what's the traditional ruler in Borno?
The Shehu of Borno.
The Shehu of Borno, does he need any prompting for him to try to influence his exercise his influence over his people?
Sometimes territoriality sets in. Yes, the Sultan can act, but he needs that entire structure to act with him.
So the entire structure, what has happened to it?
You have, the 12 northern states that implemented Sharia have commissioners for religious affairs that are controlling these things. Clearly, the governors and these commissioners have abdicated their responsibilities. They are controlling the resources, and they're not. If you go to a local government level, you have local government chairmen, mostly that were not elected. Okay, they were appointed by those governors, so they're subservient to them, and they're sharing money together. So more often than not, they are not even in their local governments. They're in the state capital, waiting for the governor to give them something. They will go and pay salaries and then revert back to go back to the state capital. So
or even out of the state capital.
Or even out of the state capitals, exactly. Or they will go to a place like Kano, which is a metropolis.
This is the influence of politics over the roles of the traditional.
Precisely. And in many instances you see that state governments are actually paying traditional rulers. Maybe sometimes it's 2%, 3% of the allocation from the local government is going to them to run the emirates, to run the system. But they're not being engaged, they are not being brought, they have not been given a definitive role to play, to say, look, this and this and this and this is what we want you to do. So that has to be clearly defined, and it has to be done. Also the interlocution, the engagement with these groups, extremist groups, has to be done discreetly. The same way President Erdogan provided Timi Alaibe with a helicopter and he was going around from camp to camp. It wasn't announced, it wasn't on TV, because the moment you make it public, then these people retract back into their shells, and then they deny ever engaging in government. So it has to be done discreetly. It has to be done sensibly if we're genuinely committed to bringing this into an end.
Honorable, you have raised so many issues. I'm coming to you, Ahmed, shortly, but just one more aspect of it. There's also this argument that over time, the influence of politics on those traditional rulers, those traditional institutions, have encroached on their authority and diminished it, such that over time, those who become the traditional rulers are cronies, agents, servants, proxies of those who wield political power. And so rather than be the ultimate supreme authority over their people, they have become subservient to the political office holders. And that way they have lost respect over time, such that when they speak, all they get is just some grudging hearing,
yes,
at all, if they get any hearing at all. Is that correct?
In certain places it's correct, but like I said, even let's say the traditional ruler is that way inclined, you might have the local imam in the town or the neighborhood or what have you, that still commands a lot of influence. So you can use these people. It's not everywhere.
But the local imams do their own things. Like you said, the institutions that probably should sift them and ensure that only the best come out to get to that level, those institutions have become subservient to some other higher political institutions, and so they have lost their control and their interest in such things.
Clearly, I'm not disputing
because
that.
It's been said over time that you've had the influence of those local imams, that they are actually the cause. When Boko Haram started, those kind of fiery preachers who have been going from place to place had become, they had won a lot of converts.
You see,
when the institutions that should have checkmated them looked the other way.
You see, you have to look at the. I see now, because the last time I was here, you were a bit reluctant to refer to them as Boko Haram. You wanted to call them Jamaatul.
Yes, but honestly, I've not been able to know how to call them. Apologies, it's not deliberate.
You have to bear in mind that they subscribe to a particular school of thought, the Salafist school of thought. You have, like I said, homegrown religious leaders, traditional leaders that are scholarly, that are respected, that command authority, that perhaps belong to some other school of thought. They're numerous, and that are homegrown. They do not subscribe to that. What these people have done is that they have come up and they've exploited a yearning of people because of years of maybe even decades of bad governance, of neglect, of corruption. And they have provided a legitimizing framework for violence, which is to say religion. So it's simple, with or without this religious slant, there would inevitably have been violence in these parts of northern Nigeria because of the poverty and because people are fed up, and because when it comes for time to change the principal actors, elections are rigged, and people are left with a sense of hopelessness, and of course the population is predominantly young. They're youths, they're jobless, they're hungry.
Ahmed, I've taken on Honorable for too long. Let me toss the coin, the other side of the coin, which he also alluded to, but which I didn't take on with him, which I am reserving for you, has to do with the influx of arms. He mentioned the collapse of the powerful regime in Libya. We know that it's not only in Nigeria that we are beginning to feel the impact now. The entire Maghreb region. In fact, the coup in Mali was traceable to that.
That's right.
And even right now, that country is battling with an insurgency again in the north of Mali that have taken over and have also imposed a complete Sharia system of government in the northern part of Mali. And so the entire Maghreb region is threatened. If that is so, it also extends to us. So
that's right.
Here we are battling with a problem that also has an international dimension. Can we cope on our own?
Yes, it's a very wonderful question. Of course, the answer has been prepared already, honestly. But if you would allow me just a few seconds, I would like to put this question on hold and go back to my statement and shed little, light, about the Islamic scholars he talked about, the traditional rulers, and the doctrinal battle that he said we need to fight. There are very good points that actually require a comprehensive exploitation and understanding. You see, there are about 3 things involved as far as this insurgency in this country is concerned. People looking at traditional rulers in the northern country, in the northern Nigeria, and counting on them, hopefully to talk to these people, and bring them to order. There are so many things that people do not understand. In Islam, different denominations do exist. The same way different denominations also exist in Christendom. In Islam, we have Jama'atu Ahl Sunnah, or let me just put it that we have Sunni, they are called different school of thought. We have Sunni, we have Shiite, yes. Yeah. We have Ja'fariya, we have Naqshbandiya, we have done so many. These people are people that belong or believe in different kind of, school of thought. The doctrines they practice are different from those who, just like in Christendom.
Yeah.
Catholic Church, we have Catholic, we have the Pentecostal Church, Anglican, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Now, this is actually some of the things. Now, unfortunately, in some of this is a group of thoughts, some of this school of thought believe that killing in Islam in any way is not obtainable. There is no way you can justify killing or bombing an innocent civilians, armless women and children. While some, because of the upside down interpretation of the Holy Quran, you understand, do believe that no, killing of, non-believers, whether Christians, whether pagans, as long as you're not a Muslim and you do not pronounce Islam as a religion, you are an infidel. You are an infidel and you're not even supposed to live.
Is that so?
Yes. Now, the issue is, Sultan of Sokoto, that's what we call Amirul Ummah. Amirul Ummah is an Arabic word referring to the leader of the entire, Muslim Ummah. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, let me still put it this way. In this country, Sultan of Sokoto belongs to a particular school of thought, a particular denomination in Islam. While there are so many other denominations that exist, and the people who practice such doctrines in those denominations do not even believe in Sultan to be a genuine and real Muslim. Tell me, how would such a person now be answerable to Sultan, even when he says, don't do this, do this? That's issue number 1. So many people are not aware of this.
But in spite of that,
yes,
things didn't get to this level until now.
Yes, that's the disconnect I'm trying to talk about now.
Okay, is it the involvement of politics in all of this
good
that has escalated all of this?
Yes, actually, politics inclusive. Why I say politics inclusive is because relying on the traditional rulers is a wonderful method of intelligence gathering. And 99.9%
not necessarily intelligence gathering,
yes,
of ensuring that things go the way they should.
Exactly.
Nobody preaches violence. Nobody engages violence.
Yes, exactly. At the same time, if anybody, any inhabitant of the vicinity is, found wanting, preaching, inflammatory doctrines and so on and so forth, those the same traditional rulers can report back to the relevant agencies in the city that this is what we've discovered, and before you know it, the securities will come in and, round up that person. Now, what I'm trying to say is that the disconnect and the involvement of politicians, there are 2 things. The political disconnect by the politicians not having to invest, in human capital development. Such kind of people, when they serve in a particular office in government, retire from the service, want to still remain relevant in the community, they go to the traditional rulers, the misguided Islamic scholars, bribe them. These people now gather the irate, jobless youth, quote the Quran, translate it upside down for these youths.
Turn them to the foot soldiers.
Yes, and they go out in mass and carry out this terrorism. You see what I mean? Now, why the belief of if they kill, so fighting the government, the Nigerian state, is a jihad, they are doing God's work, is because, in Islam, the book, that's the Holy Quran, that provides life guidance and what have you for all the Muslims, states the particular way of which a community, state, or even a nation should be ruled. Now, in Islamic Republic of Iran, where actually I happened to be there in 2003, we were taken around from the Nigerian embassy, and we discovered that every year when the country's budget is signed, there is this polio kind of approach that the country does. They assign people from the financial ministry. They go house to house, the same way we carry out polio in this country, knocking on the people's doors. When you come out, even if you are 20 in that house, in that family, each of you will be given an envelope saying that this is your own share from the nation's natural economy. If your wife is pregnant, the same envelope you were given will also be given to the wife to keep for the unborn child that is yet to be born. It's his own share. And nobody is supposed to take it away from him. Now, these people, I don't know if I'm making a point, these people now who call themselves jihadists think that if that is the case, then definitely a large quantity of their resources is being misused and they are being denied their legitimate constitutional right and privileges that they're supposed to enjoy in this country. And these things are just being carved, and cornered by just few individuals who don't even care about them anymore. They don't want to know whether you've eaten today. They don't want to know whether you have gone to school. Nothing of such.
That's the breakdown of governance.
Exactly. The poverty is talking about. Yes, because
yes, Honorable alluded
yes,
to.
exactly. He talked about. So the thing is, the traditional rulers don't need, like you said, to be called upon in public. But like the point he raised, that this is what we want you to do.
Because essentially that's yes, what they exist. That's why they exist.
Exactly, that's why they exist. Yes. But unfortunately, in those days, that's what you call jizya, or you call it, I think it's revenue, right? So it's revenue. They have revenue. They had revenue collectors those days. They go around, collect revenues, and they bring it to them, and they decide, okay, we need to do this. That is what the kind of resource they use to feed their family, feed their palace guards, sew them clothes, and what have you.
Yeah, but today such have become
taken away from them.
Such have become the responsibility of local governments. They collect the revenue, they don't see much of it.
That was why they created Emirate Council, but nothing is being given to these people.
Sorry, Honorable Tuggar. Honestly, there's one aspect that he made. I don't know whether you also agree to it. I had thought that the entire length and breadth of the Quran, no portion of it ascribes to anybody the responsibility to kill another person, except in circumstances that are also well spelled out,
Absolutely. That's why
but that somebody doesn't share your faith, I'm not so sure is one of such.
No, you see, the thing is, like I said, this is a particular school of thought, the Salafist school of thought, premised on the teachings of the likes of Hassan al-Banna, of
Lebanon,
Maulana, and then much later, Sayyid Qutb, who was an Egyptian who was jailed by the Gamal Abdel Nasser government in Egypt. He was a very bitter man. He actually read quite a bit of Jean-Paul Sartre and a lot of surprisingly Western philosophers, and he was influenced by that. He never even got married. You see, this is a Muslim who never got married.
As part of his belief.
Yeah, and these teachings are what were eventually grafted in certain schools in the Middle East, in particular in Saudi Arabia, where you also have of course the the Wahhabism school of thought there. Now, we had a situation where students were being sent from Nigeria to those schools unchecked, and they came back with this brand, and they started teaching these sort of ideas, and gradually it was becoming more and more extremist. Yeah. And this is what has given birth to this. So, but what in a nutshell, their own philosophy is that, as far as they're concerned, the entire Muslim Ummah, Muslims have deviated from the way the early Muslims practiced Islam. Therefore, me and him, who are Muslims, as far as they're concerned, are it's okay to even shed our blood. So it's not targeting non-Muslims only. It is targeting. Sorry. We've gone back to the era of Jahiliyyah, which is the time that preceded Islam. So as far as they're concerned, the Islam of today is not even Islam. Only they are the Muslims, and therefore they have to embark on this mission to cleanse the entire system. So, that's why I say it needs to be challenged doctrinally.
Yeah, gentlemen, please, a second. That is a very
churches wouldn't necessarily be an attack against just 100% Christians, because some people had argued that the attempt at bombing churches is aimed primarily at introducing a new dimension to provoke Christians, so that there's a Christians are taking on Muslims, Muslims are taking on Christians. So that's not necessarily so.
That is not, because they've killed a lot of Muslims as well. And then again, with this issue of...
Because when you go to a market and you also shoot indiscriminately at people, it's not written on the forehead of
whether it's a Muslim or it's a Christian. But when you go to church, it's isolated.
And also, you see this issue of bombing churches. There are a lot of non-Muslims that have been arrested, either attempting to bomb churches, or the incendiary devices detonated before they got to the churches that they were targeting, and these people are non-Muslims. Now the government needs to provide some clarification, because there's a lot. It heightens suspicion amongst Nigerians as well. When you have non-Muslims that are being arrested, clearly they're not Muslims. So what are they doing trying to bomb churches?
Yeah, on the killing, sir, Honorable, on the killing, you see, no matter the doctrines they practice, just like in Christendom, all the Pentecostal churches and the Catholic Church use Bible as a holy book, right? So also in Islam, despite the denominations that exist and the different doctrines that people believe in, they still use Quran as a holy guide. Now, in this same holy Quran, I quote it here, the previous interviews I had, that in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and I quote, he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Man qatala mu'minan muta'ammidan fajaza'ahu jahannama khalidan fiha wa ghadiba Allahu lahu wa a'adda lahu azaban azima. This is a verse that clearly states and prohibits the killing of anybody, innocent soul, big or small, woman or man. And then, like I said before, when Prophet Muhammad actually came to Mecca, there were no Muslims and there were no Christians. The people he met were purely pagans. They were worshipping idols, candles, and fire and cows and what have you. And then there was, because of the persecution that Prophet Muhammad faced, actually, there was a revelation from God through Angel Gabriel that Muhammad should go and, the verse was, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَى لَا تَكُونُوا فِتْنًا وَيَكُونُ دِينُ اللَّهِ كُلُّهُ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. That fight them, completely, as in with everything you've got, until there is no corruption, until there is no poverty, until there is no persecution, until there is no any kind of injustice on earth, whether those pagans believe it or not. What people fail to understand is that these people think that Quran was referring to Christians. Christians in the Holy Quran are called Ahlul Kitab. Ahlul Kitab is peoples of scripture. They are not pagans because they believe in God. You see what I mean? While that verse was actually referring to people who have no God to worship at all.
Okay.
I don't know if you understand this point.
I do.
Like
Honorable said, again, is the influence of this doctrinal...
Yes, the Islamic scholars.
Exactly, and then you need people to challenge them.
That's what we're talking about.
On a playing platform.
Good.
But then before we get there, the booming guns need to be silent. The explosive devices need to be taken off. People need to You know, we have to do this in an atmosphere of peace. That leads me to the question of the arms. I'm reading from the white paper. The report observed that there is massive influx of illegal aliens. Okay, that's about illegal aliens. I'm looking for the one that talked about illegal influx of weapons and all of that. Yeah, but while I'm busy looking for that, the influx of weapons, how do you think we can go about? Is this something that is beyond us as a country? Because we have very porous borders. You can actually smuggle in a trailer load of weapons undetected.
We're the giant of the region. We can lean on our neighbors to improve their own security systems and the proliferation of weapons, at least as far as our borders are concerned. You know, if we lean on them, you know, because, you know, we closed our borders with Chad because of, you know, the violence, and they were feeling the pinch. You know, it hurt their economy. And the same thing with Niger. They cannot survive without us. So we need to work, but you see, we need to work with them.
Can we work within the framework of ECOWAS or the AU?
We can work within the frame of ECOWAS and beyond, because you also have Central African states that are equally involved in this thing. But we have...
That's ECOWAS and AU.
Yeah, and AU. We have regional platforms. We share similar problems. You know, if you look at the Lake Chad, you know, the receding waters of the Lake Chad, the Sahel region as a whole, you know, has become a theater for violence and for future conflict. We need to be able, this is where statesmanship is required. We need to draw them together. We need to work collectively, you know, as a unit to be able to solve some of these problems. But you see, our stature regionally and on the continent has diminished. We're not being heard. And this is where, again, I revert back to the issue of
probably because we have not shown good examples.
Yes, this is where I revert to the presidency as a bully pulpit. And it's not just the president. I don't want us to just keep on focusing on the president and the federal government alone. We have 3 tiers of government. Time was when we had dynamic governors who were engaging their counterparts in the other countries, and even the presidents. You know, you would have relationships between the governor of Kano or Jigawa and the governors or the prefects of Maradi and so on and so forth. These interchanges have to continue. They have to, but you need people that are focused, that are dedicated, and that were voted by the people. Because if you are not voted by the people, you know that you rigged it, then you don't care about them. You know, exactly. You neglect your responsibilities and you just share money.
Tied to this is the observation of the report, or the one I was trying to read earlier, which is the massive influx of aliens. Is we argue that most of the attacks that we witness are actually carried out by non-Nigerians. Well, is there a way to differentiate who a Nigerian is and who a Nigerian is?
There is, honestly. You know, we almost argued this the last time I was here.
Yes.
There is. You see, I don't believe that 80% of the attacks are being carried out by non-Nigerians. That is not true. In Maiduguri, Borno State capital, the Boko Harams or the Jama'atu Ahl Sunnah Da'wat wal Jihadis.
Thank you. Let me use that word.
Yeah, because I'm actually a very ambitious young man and I intend to live for a very long time. So let me note up. You see, they have their recruits, just like he said, who travel outside the country to our neighboring African countries under the guise of going to seek for Islamic knowledge. Those people will be criminally indoctrinated. They will contaminate their minds, and then when they return, because on the side of the government, the security agencies, there is a very serious carelessness and high level of ignominy. They don't care how many people. Okay, the operational, coordination of the intelligence gathering, because this is very important. 99.9% of security effectiveness is proactivity. The information you get in advance before the deed happens. All right. So now, in this country, for this year's budget, 1 trillion was appropriated for security. For God's sake. The Office of National Security Advisor intends to spend 29.8 billion naira for satellite communications and vehicles, and signal triangulation gadgets. The Department of State Security Service intends to spend about 1 billion naira on operational vehicles and GSM location, trackers. Are we really getting the value of our money? This is our money from our resources. And this money is meant to be utilized so we can be safe. You and I can sleep with our doors of the houses opened. Are we getting the value of this money that is being spent on security? And or there are the lawmakers, let me put it this way, are just trying to make the security chiefs, richer than they're supposed to be.
Okay, a lot of accountability issues that you raised.
Yes, that is not there. Every budget in security circles is classified.
Yeah, but I'm told that time is running against us. But there's one that we need to quickly talk about, which is the recommendation that government, the committee observed that there have been no attempts by government and the security agencies to understand the ideology and motives of the Boko Haram sect by engaging sect members in dialogue. Dialogue, we are talking about dialogue. The committee recommended the urgent need to constructively engage and dialogue with the leadership of the sect as an essential strategy in bringing them on board. Do we know them? How do we bring them on board for the purposes of dialogue?
We need to bring them on board discreetly. And we need to also, what this report has said is apt. We need to look at how conflicts in other parts of the world were solved. If you look at the IRA, the roles that the likes of Reverend Father Alec Reed played in solving the IRA problem, which was a sectarian
violence
conflict with Catholics and Protestants, and it was also in this case bilateral, but also in our case it has to be multilateral. We're talking about Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and maybe even Cameroon. Actually, Cameroon is definitely part of it. So we need to engage these people discreetly, the same way that, like I pointed out, Timi Alaibe was given a helicopter to fly around discreetly to camps, yes, and he engaged these people. So we need discreetly to find out, people that they would be, and not to come out and start publicizing it before we've achieved anything. But definitely
it's not a dialogue that should be politicized.
It should not.
It
should not.
Is it possible to identify those who could engage in this? I think among them should probably be not the political office holders, but the scholars.
The scholars
and probably the local imams
and
youth also,
and also some of the politicians who, went into bed with some of these groups. I've said this before in this program.
But you see, the government will probably need to be a little bit more upbeat about all of this. All of this started since last year. Gatimari Committee was set up in August. By September, it had produced a report. By October, the government set up a white paper drafting committee, and it made the white paper came out. Look at the length of time it has taken to map out the strategy, and then after that, nothing has happened.
That is the problem. There's so many such reports in different
Okay, we'll see if we can continue along this line, because it talked about what we need to do, how to tackle the issue of poverty that you raised much earlier and all of that. All right, thank you so very much. I appreciate your time today. Honorable Yusuf Tuggar has joined us for discussions this morning. Former member of House of Representatives, former governorship candidate of the CPC in Bauchi State, in actual fact, in the last election. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time, as always.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. And of course, Honorable Tuggar has been joined on the program this morning by Ahmed Saleh. Ahmed is a public security analyst. Thank you so very much, Ahmed. I appreciate your time too. Thank you for investing your time with us. We deeply appreciate it. We look forward to having you with us same time tomorrow. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Be security conscious, stay out of trouble, and I'll see you tomorrow.